Thumbs up, watch for a light, there it is. Let's call this meeting to order of the Oakland County Board of Commissioners, Planning and Building Committee. Today's Tuesday, August 14th. Could we have a roll call, please?
Crawford?
Here.
McGillivray?
Here.
Dwyer?
Here.
Teets is not here. Jackson? Here. Whitebird?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Could we join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Could we have approval of the previous minutes? Moved by Commissioner Crawford, supported by Commissioner McGillivray. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That passed. Could we have approval of today's agenda? Any changes? So moved. Moved by Commissioner Crawford, supported by Commissioner Jackson. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passed. Any public comment today? Seeing no public comment, we'll move on to today's regular agenda. The first item is Department of Central Services Oakland County International Airport 2018 Grant Program Acceptance to remove obstructions on runway 9R Phase 2 construction. Motion by Commissioner Crawford, supported by Commissioner McGillivray. Good morning.
Good morning, Cheryl Bush, Airport Manager. This morning we have a grant that we're looking for approval on. This is for removal of tree obstructions in runway 9 right. And this is going to be funded through the state grant for $97,200 and our 10% local match at $10,800, which will be funded through the airport fund.
Any questions? So how, I don't see reference to the airport. There's always the airport fund can fund the airport fund. What's in that airport fund? I mean it's from
$16 million.
$16 million? Okay. Never run low.
Not yet.
That's from fees and
Self-supporting.
And these grants are always the 90-10s. I noticed that's
Right. The federal grants are 95-5, federal, state, local, and the state grants are 90-10.
Okay. I see that on the next one. Any other questions? Let's call the roll.
Crawford?
Yes.
McGillivray?
Yes.
Dwyer?
Yes.
Jackson? Yes. Whitebird?
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 2 is Department of Central Services, Oakland Troy Airport 2018 Grant Program Acceptance, Rehabilitation Terminal Apron, Design and Construction, Airfield, Crack Sealing, and Paint Marking. Motion by Commissioner Crawford, supported by Commissioner McGillivray. Good morning again.
Good morning again. And as stated, this grant is to fund the rehabilitation of a terminal project, which is an apron. It's the ramp area out of the terminal at our Troy Airport. This is a federal grant, so this applies, the 95-5 rule applies here. And again, will be funded through the airport fund.
I did see that with the 95 in there. That's nice funding.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, very generous.
Any questions? And I saw some of these contracts are open 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years for audits and things like that. Do we ever? And record keeping rules are that we must maintain the record for 3 to 6 years.
Right.
Does that stuff come up?
It does. We haven't had any issue with it, but it takes the state sometimes up to 2 years to close out a project.
Mm-hmm.
If you recall our rehabilitation of Taxiway Charlie last year, which was an $8 million project, and that's not closed yet through all the state documentation and requirements.
Okay.
Takes them definitely the length of time to complete.
Okay. Any questions from what I asked? Let's call the roll.
McGillivray?
Yes.
Dwyer?
Yes.
Jackson? Yes. Crawford?
Yes.
Whitebird?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Item number 3 is Department of Central Services, authorization to negotiate the sale of 5341 Tubbs Road. Moved by Commissioner Crawford, supported by Commissioner McGillivray.
Aye.
You give us background on this. This is a
Okay.
house out on Tubbs Road. And
Excuse me.
Yes.
Paul Zeckles,
from facilities. Airport has a house that was part of an acquisition in 2002, I think it was, as a airport expansion. And then that house was used as a demo to help residents in the area get upgrades to their homes due to the, well, it's called an airport package. So that house was used to help residents see what was available at the time. And the house has been sitting. Airports finally decided to sell it, and they did a little work to it. So they've split it off from part of the, it was a long parcel going into the airport to the south. They split it off and they're ready to sell it. It's about a 1,500 square foot home, 2-story, and they've made it into marketable condition. So they're looking at getting a realtor to list it and get it going.
So, I mean, they did improvements to this house for sound deadening and noise reduction.
Yes, this house
and
had those
neighbors.
improvements. They're over 10 years. They're maybe 10 to 15 years old, as far as I know, that those improvements were done. So the home is really just in good shape. It's not, it's not a remodeled home by any means, but it's a nice home. It would be a great home for some family.
Any questions? And so, Commissioner McGilvery.
What's the approximate value on the home?
About 200,000.
And there's no issues on it wasn't for an air expansion or a sound buffer or?
Well, there may be some issues with, buyers looking at that, but it's far enough away. It's actually on Tubbs Road. It's east of the main airport, and that's considered, what do you call that?
The runway safety zone.
Mhm.
Safety zone.
The south half of the parcel was rezoned to be able to retain that parcel in the runway safety zone. But the north section of the parcel was outside of that, and it's along neighboring homes in the area.
So it's far enough east. It's actually closer to Waterford Township Hall. It's not too far from there.
Okay.
So it's still a pretty good neighborhood.
Any other questions? So you just want authority to go out and
Negotiate.
put this on the market?
Yes.
Any other questions? Let's call roll.
Dwyer,
Yes.
Teets,
Yes.
Jackson, Crawford.
Yes.
McGilvray.
Yes.
Whitebird.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Item number 4, you're welcome. Item number 4 is facilities management lease rate increase for the 52-4 Troy District Court. Need motion? Commissioner Crawford, supported by Commissioner Jackson. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Art Holsworth, Director of Facilities Management. Obviously,
All that goes for facilities?
And I'm Kurt Bogensiep, I'm the Public Works Director for the City of Troy.
so Kurt is basically my equivalent at the City of Troy. The District Courthouse is on the City of Troy campus. It's a City of Troy building. We've been there since at least 1996. And we have built that courthouse together, the city and the county. At the time, there was a lease that was put together allowing us occupancy of that space. In that lease, it spelled out what our rent obligations were. For 22 years, the city had the option to increase rent per the lease, but they never did. Here we are 22 years later, and they are asking for a rent increase spurred by a rebidding of custodial services. They had the same custodial contractor for how many years?
10 years.
10 years without, or at least with minimal increases from the contractor. So when they rebid out, the costs came in considerably higher than what they were paying. Our share, the increased share of that cost would equate to $45,684. Now, per the terms of the lease, we're only allowed a 6% per year bump. That, of course, exceeds that 6%, but again, if we had just been paying a normal CPI increase for the last 22 years, the total rent would have been $293,000, I believe it was. And this will take us up to a total of $203,000, even with this increase. So, again, we decided that it was quite fair, and we wanted to continue a positive relationship with the city. So we worked with Corp Counsel, prepared the lease amendment that is attached to the resolution. Kurt was kind enough to join us here to answer any questions about the bidding process or any other services that they provide to us for the courthouse. Alexandra Black is here representing the city of Troy, although she's, the Troy Courthouse, District Courthouse, even though she's from the Novi District Courthouse. And at this point, I'll just open it up to any questions that you might have.
I also want to say one thing. In lieu of rent, in this situation, the county is paying the expenses. So actually, the rent is their cost plus utilities.
Yes.
So the price per square foot is very reasonable.
It's a very good
Overall,
point, yes.
it's under $11 a square foot.
Commissioner Dwyer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning. So you're going from 200, or you're going to recommending 293,190 instead of the 157,604. What's the percentage increase?
We're going to 203,000 from the 157. It would have been 293.
Oh, could have been 293, I'm
if we had
sorry.
been paying just a normal CPI
Okay.
increase over 22 years.
Okay. So what would be the percentage increased?
I believe it's, oh boy. Yeah, overall it'd be about 30%. Because again, 157 to 203,
Yeah.
right?
And I'm just wondering why.
33%.
33%. Just wondering why at this time is that significant increase being recommended?
Well, it was again spurred by the fact that they rebid and their custodial services, and the custodial contract that they have now is considerably higher than what it used to be, the prior contractor. So that spurred this discussion with the city about increasing the rent. It obviously violated the 6% cap that's in the lease. But again, given the fact we've not had any increases for 22 years, we didn't feel that it was unreasonable.
How old is that building?
I assume it was completely renovated in '96.
Correct. Yeah, occupancy was in 1999. Work began in 1996.
And when was it built?
It's several additions. The original building, I believe, dates back to the 70s. It was the old rec center for the city of Troy.
So who paid for the renovations at that time? The city? City of Troy?
The county was responsible
county
for
was?
renovating it into a court.
Okay, and what was the expense there as far as the renovations, if you recall?
I do not recall.
I do not recall either. I did not go back to research that.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Jackson?
Thank you. So, the original 6% cap that was detailed in the lease, corporate counsel worked that out with the city of Troy. How did we, change the language and make sure that it's suitable at this point?
Well, the lease amendment simply increases the dollar amount, and then reiterates that starting July 1st, 2019, this amount may be annually adjusted, but in no event will any increase exceed the 6%. So again, we're reiterating the fact that going forward, it's capped at 6% still.
And the old lease had a 6% cap on that service, but it was never changed over the 20 years, so it stayed the same.
So had they ever done the 6%, enacted the 6%, we would be much higher at this point. The only thing I can say is that the rent at my court, we're paying $372,000 a year. The building is comparable in size, actually, even though the caseload is smaller and they have less judges, they have more space than, let's say, Clarkston. So, although it's a big increase, if they had enacted the 6% over time, we would be much higher at this point.
Commissioner Crawford, did you have a question?
No, just a comment. I think that's one reason that for years, I think, we, meaning the county, have been trying to own our buildings instead of rent them. So that's still out there someplace someday to own our district court buildings instead of rent them. Also, the 6%, is it 6% per year?
Per year.
It's not just the increase now at the end of this period. We've been paying many hundreds of thousands of dollars over the last 20 years with the 6% per year increase. So this, I don't even know what that would add up to. It's got to be a lot more than you see with just the end of the lease, the end of the 20 years increase.
In terms of the-
293, right?
Yeah.
Well, a 3% increase a year for 22 years is what equals to 293.
6%, yeah.
But a 6% would probably
It would
be
have been
closer to
over
350
here.
or 400,000.
At least, yeah, so.
We would be closer to the mark that
It's-
nobody's at. And I
Yeah.
agree with you that, you know, we love to own.
Alex,
our
could
own
you use the
buildings.
microphone, please?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I agree with you that we love to own our own buildings, and that's why our rent is where it is, because
Yeah.
we've had multiple owners at this point. And of course, every time it gets bought and sold, and, you know, they want what's market value for their rent. So, we love to own them, but obviously we're not, the county isn't in a position to buy and own all of the district courts at this time. Clarkston obviously being in the worst shape, they're busting at the seams. But, like you said, and that's what I was saying, is that over time, the 6% would have added up to closer to where we are right now.
And there's no, talking about getting our own building, there's no room for expansion at the Novi Court. I don't know about the rest of them, but
That's correct.
it
We
looks
are-
like there's a lot of land around there, but it's swamp and it's other people's property and everything else. So
Yes.
there's not much room there.
I mean, to get a sidewalk in the back of the building now that we have the new parking lot has been quite an achievement, just to get
Goes
sidewalk
through.
next to the building.
Yeah, goes through wetlands.
Yes.
I have a lot of golf balls in there from Bob Lake Golf Course. Okay, thank you.
Was Troy shocked when the bids came out on the, for
Troy-
your custodial service? I mean,
Troy-
the city.
Sure.
For the-
Troy estimated that we would see about a 30% increase, and we saw about a 33% increase across the board.
Okay.
So
So it wasn't too far out of line from what you thought?
The previous contract was, we requested specific services in the contract, where this one, we actually went out for request for proposals. We met with each department, including the administrative staff at the 52nd District Court, and to see what their demands were for custodial services. So we were able to meet those demands through the RFP process, but in turn, we did see a bit higher increase than what we expected.
Okay, just a bit though. If you expected 30, it was 33, that's, and you had a contractor that was in place for 10 years and.
That's correct.
And
I
you
took
want-
actually many concessions during the recession.
Okay. There's no, I mean, your city of Troy, there's no privatizing, or letting the county do custodial. It's, the city of Troy is managing that whole property.
Correct. We did look at that as options when we met with the administrative staff at the court, and discussed that the county could potentially take over the custodial services, and we could amend the current lease agreement as such. However, I think it was determined that it was in the best interest to use the city's contractor.
Okay. And Paul, it's, the rent's still below what the market is?
Yeah, I've calculated, that the, 203,000 is about $6.20 a square foot. If you add the utilities into it, you're up around $11 a square foot. In Troy, you can't find anything like that.
Okay.
Big Beaver.
Commissioner Teets?
I can't see how you'd vote no on this,
Mhm.
because, I mean, hate paying any price for any service, but I just don't see how a no vote would even make sense, unless we wanna go, clean the courthouse ourselves, because that's, I don't know.
Commissioner Crawford?
Yeah, is it, back to the owning our own courthouses, is there any active effort to look for a building or to do something to own some of our courthouses?
So in Clarkston, the county owns its own land.
Okay,
It's on Dixie Highway.
so they can build?
That was purchased 10 years ago. So there's a parcel that's about 10 acres, and it's sitting there ready for plans. But I don't think the plans are even on the drawing board until 2023.
We're gonna be talking about the capital improvement plan here shortly.
Next, yeah.
And in the future projects, which are not non-funded, but that we recognize a project has to be done someday, there are 2 district courthouses in there, one for Clarkston and one for Novi. There is not one in there for Troy. And let's say we build Clarkston, we build Novi, Clarkston would be the only one that we're anticipating that we would not own, and that's only because it is on the City of Troy complex. It's right next to the police department, the City of Troy Police Department. And the relationship has always been a mutually beneficial one.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a good contractual relationship and a real, actual good relationship.
Right. So, to be honest, I've never had a conversation about whether or not to build our own courthouse in Troy. It's always been Novi and Clarkston.
I'm interested in Novi.
Yep, so is Alexandra. Anyways, I've had conversations with administration about this, and we know what the termination dates are on those 2 leases, and we're hoping, fingers crossed, that the stars will align and we'll be able to bond for those 2 new courthouses when those leases expire. I believe Clarkson expires in about 5 years. That would be 2023.
Yes.
And then yours, I believe, is a year or 2 after that. So that would be the relative time frames, 23 and 25.
There's probably property available across, on the south side of Grand River in the Providence complex. There may be property available there, so I hope somebody's looking at real estate before it all gets gobbled up.
Well, we have talked with administration about that, but again, nothing's moved ahead.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner McGovern?
Yeah, Art, I don't know if you're prepared to do this. Can you give me a history lesson on how some courts are under the control of the county and others are under the municipality that they exist in?
Alexandra can.
So way back, the 4 corners, basically where you have Troy, Clarkston, Novi, and Rochester, they could not, there wasn't enough population to support having their own courthouse. They had to take all of those municipalities and put them into one. So like Waterford District Court just serves Waterford, but Rochester serves approximately 13 different jurisdictions. So they went together and created their own district court for affordability purposes. It was just too rural at the time. Same with Novi. In fact, I started out there 24 years ago, and just in 24 years, it's amazing the growth. But at the time, Novi couldn't support having their own court, and there are a lot of smaller municipalities. We have 13, I think, out there. I don't know, you might know.
No, but that's roughly right.
Yeah, so, and they're all small municipalities. I mean, Wolverine Lake, Walled Lake, Commerce, they didn't have enough money to fund their own. So, the jurisdictions that did, obviously, spent the money and built their own courthouses and support just their city, whereas we made these little substations, basically, kind of like how the sheriff's department does. The other thing was, at the time, even the probation department was here at the county. So all of the probation officers for those 4 district courts were in one building here next to the jail, and we all worked there and served those different judges. So it was fiscally, it was just more, it was less expensive to do it that way. And we've remained that way, obviously, because it served the public well to have that. We used to have White Lake as part of our jurisdiction, and then eventually, as the population grew, they realized that it was easier for White Lake to get to Clarkston, so then they broke off from us, but that's how it came to be.
Just curious, because it seems, it just seems like a lot, like down in my area, Madison Heights, Hazel Park, and Ferndale,
Right.
each city has their own courthouse.
Right, because the population supported it.
Yeah, and I understand that the idea is to try to get one courthouse that's centrally located to several communities.
Right.
Okay, thanks.
And that's why they're located sort of where they all are. So Clarkston is near 75, we're near 96, Troy's near 75 as well, Rochester's near 75. They put them in central locations, easy on, easy off sort of places.
Now, in the Troy court, if I get a traffic ticket, is it just Troy?
Troy and Clawson.
Clawson.
So they serve, because Troy is very large, obviously, but they have Clawson, and I think they have another very small municipality. I'm sorry, I don't remember exactly, but I know they have Clawson as well.
Okay.
But you won't get a ticket, I'm sure.
Don't count on that.
At the time, all the city district courts had the option to partner with the county, and they opted not to. That was what I heard from McCabe or someone. Very good. History.
Any other questions? Well, and it's a good partnership, and it's been right along, and seems like it's, even though it's a big jump, it's historically, it doesn't look like it's too far along. And the rents are still beyond market, so. Any other questions? Call roll.
Teets,
Yes.
Jackson.
Yes.
Crawford.
Yes.
McGilvray.
Yes.
Dwyer.
Yes.
Whitebird.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 5 is Department of Facilities Management fiscal year 2019, fiscal year 2028 capital improvement program. This is 12 projects, $61 million. Moved by Commissioner Dwyer, supported by Commissioner Jackson.
Okay.
It's the Planning and Building Committee's role is to work through with the administration on the 5-year plan for capital improvements. Let's go through them.
So again, Art Holdsworth, Director of Facilities Management.
Ed Joss, Manager of Facilities Planning and Engineering.
So every year, we update our capital improvement plan. For a long time, it was a 5-year capital improvement plan. In recent years, I think this might be the 3rd year we've been doing this, we've included another column, a single column for an additional 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
So it's titled as a 10-year plan, although we only have details for the first 5 because only the first 5 are actually funded in the triennial budget that administration puts together. It is broken down into 2 sections, a building project section and a civil project section. Within the building projects, there are 12 categories totaling $61 million. In the civil section, there are 6 categories totaling $25 million, for a grand total of $87 million. For those of you that have been on the Planning and Building Committee for a number of years, let's say from the recession to today, you will have noticed a huge increase in the grand total of the CIP budget from the depths of the recession to right now. Part of that is that during the recession we were doing very minimal major project work, and just doing, tinkering to keep things going, and trying to keep the useful life of various systems, going as long as we possibly could. We're getting to the point where we're having some breakdowns, and we're getting to the point where we're literally unable to get parts for certain systems. And so we're playing catch-up to a large degree. And then second, there have been large project initiatives, such as the Building Security Enhancements Project, which has been in front of you now for almost 3 years. And that's going to continue. We've also added 2 additional categories. One was in the plan last year. That was the life safety enhancements. That's things like fire alarm systems, fire egress paths, fire egress signage, and things like that.
Sure.
And then ADA compliance would be the newest category. So that, would be like door handles, bathrooms that need to be ADA compliant. What else would that include?
Ramps, just clear pathways.
The Corp Council office is working very closely with us on that ADA compliance office project. And the Life Safety Enhancements Project, we have an architect that's been working with us very closely, who's gone out to all of our buildings, done an analysis, and documented all the improvements we have to make there. In Brooks's recommended budget, there is a $30 million project that might be bonded for in 2019, which would pay for the life safety, the ADA, and a continuation of the Building Security Enhancements Project over the next, I believe, 4 or 5 years is how we spread those costs out. It could be 6 years. I'd have to go back and double check. But anyways, it'll be over a number of years.
Cool, can I interrupt you for 1 second?
Mm-hmm.
So we did the $15 million for all the ongoing security.
We
And then-
actually didn't bond for the building security
Well, the
enhancements.
15
We used general fund money.
Okay, $15 million there. It was
Mhm.
15 million, sorry.
Yep.
So what, are we talking about you mentioned $30 million of bonding to continue that? Part of that?
Right, it would be for the life safety, the ADA compliance, and the
Continuation?
building security enhancements. And that continuation of the building security enhancements is coming from a separate study that was commissioned this past year with a group called Titan LLC, which are security experts. And so this is getting down to a more granular level. So these projects that we've been doing are things like security stations and building the security clear zones around the buildings, real big projects. This is a whole bunch of smaller projects, like improving fire exit monitoring and things like that.
Okay.
Additional cameras, a new intercom system, things like that. The ADA project is roughly 2/3 of that 30 million, a little less than that. And then the life safety is about 1/3 of it, and then not quite 1/3, maybe 1/4 of it, and then the life safety enhancements is only about 5 million out of that 30 million. So.
And I don't want to interrupt you too much on your presentation, but on the ADA, is that part of the courtrooms too, or no?
Yes.
Okay. All right, go back to your presentation.
Now, as you may already know, we are doing ADA enhancements to the probate courtrooms already, that we funded out of the capital improvement plan separately from what we're going to be looking at here. There's also a future project section that I alluded to earlier in the CIP. This year we categorized the projects into 4 categories: judicial, public safety, water resource commissioner, and then other, which is more generic things. So you can see how many judicial projects and public safety projects are in there for the long term, these future projects. Those two district courthouses we talked about earlier are in there under the judicial category. Around 22 million apiece is what we're projecting. The newest addition, major addition to this is the Water Resource Commissioner. Have been talking about building a new wing on the Public Works building so they could consolidate various WRC operations from several different locations into the one headquarters here. That is projected at around 21 million. If they do that project, they'll be bonding for that one as well, and it could be within the next year or two. But again, it's on the future project list because no definite plans have been made. The remainder of the document you see before you are the details that make up this summary sheet. So for example, if you were to look at the roof replacement program, which is category 1 under building projects, you'll see all the individual buildings that are going to have new roofs over the next 5 to 10 years. And then all the other pages are similarly presented for the different categories. And at this point, I'll just open it up to any questions that you have.
Questions? Commissioner McGilvery.
Hang on, let me go back here. Sorry about that. I was curious on the ADA projects. Are we ADA compliant right now in this building and all the other county buildings?
It's an ongoing process.
It's an ongoing process. So over the years, the ADA requirements have continued to change. So at one time, we would be compliant, and a few years later, we wouldn't be compliant. Whenever we do a new construction or a remodeling project, that area is done according to all current building codes and all ADA codes existing at that time. We've done other projects over the years to help improve our compliance with the ADA. A few years ago, for example, we put in the ADA compliant ramps at all the intersections, ramps and signage at all the intersections around campus, for example. We've not done a overall comprehensive effort to bring everything up to the current ADA compliant codes until this point in time.
And that's what the 17 million is.
Correct. Now, there also have been things like, a good example of what we've been doing though is we have ADA compliant restrooms in the lobbies of the courthouse here. But that's not to say that every single bathroom is ADA compliant, because the ADA code allows you to have a ADA compliant restroom within a certain distance of all the offices, and it doesn't require you to make every single bathroom ADA compliant. And another example would be okay, let's say you have an office on the second floor that's not ADA compliant. Well, it would be, what would be compliant is to move that office's functions or the main functions that the public needs down to the first floor, which is ADA compliant. So my point being is there's a lot of different ways that you could comply with the law without making the entire building completely ADA compliant, if you're following me. And so those sort of things we have been doing over the years, but this should bring everything on every floor up to the current ADA code, which we feel is really the best thing to do. And again, those projects, if they are bonded for, will be coming to you again for approval, and that won't be until probably the middle of 2019 at the earliest. The fiscal year, so that means the winter time.
Okay. Any other questions? Commissioner Jackson.
Thank you. And so these projects will include off-campus sites like healthcare in Southfield, like that building as well?
Correct.
And this needs committee approval to go to finance?
Correct.
Any other questions? Dad, you got anything?
Don't have anything to add at this time.
Well played.
Well, let's call the roll.
Jackson,
Yes.
Crawford.
Yes.
McGilvray,
Yes.
Dwyer,
Yes.
Teets,
Yes.
Whiteford.
Yes. So thank you, yes,
Um,
thank you very much. That's,
You know, the individual resolutions that we bring as a department to you during the year, if it's CIP funded, we say that in the resolution. You would be able to go back and find those projects in these detail sheets. So my point being is even though we're presenting this document to you, these CIP projects are not being approved by you right now. This is just a projection of what we expect to be bringing to you on a one-by-one basis over the years. So,
yeah, I mean, it's not a budgetary commitment, it's a
That's
planning
correct.
document that lists the priorities from the administration's perspective. I mean,
That's exactly right. Yeah.
so, and then everything comes to us as it
Individually.
arises.
Yep.
So,
All right,
any other questions? Thank you.
thank you.
Okay. Then, communications? No communications? Any other business? We'll call this adjourned.